Hi everyone, I hope you're well. So let us proceed with this interesting little mirror. Just basically a tile, I suppose, with a couple of holes drilled and this lovely bit of rope added to it. And I have been engraving in the previous two videos on the back and on the front. And on the front I've engraved over the letters and around the letters as well. And on the back you can see there's some effect on the outside of the letters. And then I have just filled in these two letters solidly. I've just engraved away the background. So I've still got those two letters to do. And then I will have I'll be able to show you the effect with a light source coming through the back. You know, if for example you wanted to have that as an option with a light behind it. But what I would like to do, specifically if this is something you're going to hang on the wall or in a bathroom or whatever, then it would be better to have the colour in the back. Because unless you're going to somehow fit a light between this and the wall, which these days you can do with LED quite easily, but otherwise I'm hoping that a bit of interesting colour in the back of the letters. I'm not even sure how the engraving on the top is going to show up. It's going to be really interesting and good fun. And I don't think I'll even put solid colour. I might even mix it up. I'm thinking about that. You know what I'm like. And so I think whether I add any more around the edges, probably not. It's mainly just the two letters and the colouring, and I think that'll be good fun. Right, okie dokes, let's get on with it. So a fairly large diamond in the drill and lots of water, and I will simply carve away this grey coating. It's not very thick. I've certainly come across mirrors in the past that are much thicker. I think the very old mirrors used to be really thick. Now you can see I've decided to change to a bigger burr. I don't have a lot of patience. I've done an outline anyway that is quite thick, so it's not going to be going over the edges too easily. Keeping within the lines, just scrubbing away. And you can see, because it is wet, makes it, you know, fairly transparent, and you can see the flowers on the other side of the glass. Just slowly removing all of this grey. It's got a sort of an orangey, painty stuff. Oh gosh, I sound really ignorant, don't I? Well, I am. I don't know the first thing about silvering the glass, and it's quite fascinating, the finish. Anyway, removing this background, I'm using lots of water. Basically the usual story. It's going to really help everything by using the water. So drying it off, you can see that it's quite neat. And let's have a look from the other side. Well, it's a busy little patch of engraving, isn't it? But you can see how the upper surface flowers are showing up relatively well. But I still want to use my colour. I'm still experimenting. This is going to be a lot of fun. So to begin with, I'm going to experiment with some green. This, as you can see, is just an acrylic paint. It's pretty old. I wasn't even sure if they were going to still work. I thought when I picked them up they might be solid, but in actual fact they're not bad at all. And I had in the drawer an old lipstick brush, which is still in relatively good condition actually, but I washed all the lipstick off it because I wanted to use it because it had a nice consistency. It was quite strong. And there we are. You can see the little touch of green, and we have instant green leaves. I really like this. I don't think you even need much paint. I mean, as you can see, this is quite thin. I'm not going to fuss. You can go over the edges, of course, because, well, not over the other engraving, but over the edge of the leaves, because it's not going to show. All it's going to show is what is engraved, so you don't have to be that neat. It's rather nice and very, very quick. Having said that, I will be speeding up. I will have sped up this video to about 120, 130% of normal speed. Okay, whizzing along with the green. The acrylic paints, of course, are a water-based paint, which just makes it a lot easier and quicker. And, yeah, easier to keep your brush in fairly good condition. So there you see all our little green leaves, all lovely and neat. And I decided very, very simple flowers, all the same. I mean, really, you can have so much fun with this when you think about it. There's so many things that you could engrave, or to decorate a mirror, a little bunny, a little cartoon bunny even, on the back, maybe engraved and then painted, and then with a little bit of flowery bits on the front. Who knows? I mean, anything goes really. I'm thinking things like a little section of mushrooms. There's all sorts of things you could do. You could have a great deal of fun with this. So I've blobbed the yellow one a little bit thicker. And here I've got some red to pop in the middle. As you can see, I am not exactly taking my time over this. And now we are going to get seriously inventive. There we are, the little flowers and the leaves. I'm showing you here the light behind it before I add any more paint, so that you can see, you know, if you wanted to light it up somehow. But quite frankly, with the engraving on the top, all it does is blur it a bit. So, yeah. But anyway, you can see quite clearly how if you were to light behind, it shows through really nicely if you engrave away the back. I remember learning at school the colours of the rainbow: violet, indigo, blue, green, yellow, orange and red. And I'm not going to sing it to you. No, I'm definitely not. And so okay, this is going somewhat in reverse. And it's also a kind of 60s or a sort of a hippie, Woodstocky kind of theme. They were very colourful. And so I'm randomly adding the rainbow in reverse, really. Again, not being particularly neat. I've got a lot of paint on my brush. Washing it, of course, in water after each colour. Idea where I've gone. There we go. Some green. Yeah, I was a little bit limited to the colours that I had. I mean, I could have made my own green out of the blue and yellow, but the blues that I've got in this little old pack are not quite as they should be as primary colours. There's not a sort of a primary blue in there to mix with the yellow, and so I made do with the ready-made colours that were already in there. Adding my own slight change to the rainbow. This green has a little bit more blue in it than the other. Before I do any more engraving, once I've painted the back, I will be leaving it to dry. And basically what I did was left it overnight after this, and the next morning it was rock solid. So this blue, you might say, well, it's not really a rainbow type of blue. And what I might have done instead is put this blue last. But in actual fact, I think it's after this one, I use a French ultramarine, which is a bit darker. But it kind of helped to frame the top and bottom, the bottom of it. Because we've got a red on the top, which is quite dark. And so the last colour I decided to use is quite dark. As you can see, not a primary colour at all. This has got a lot of red in it. But it's a good hippie colour. So being very careful with the wet paint. There you see our our rather colourful word love in the back of the mirror. Now, it actually just looks like a mess. When you look at it from a distance, you can't really see what's going on. So, feeling my way around, I decided to add an outline to the letters, but the outline being on the top of the mirror. It's interesting. And here you can see the light behind it instantly changes the effect. It's actually rather fun. So if you were just doing the engraving on the back and putting the colour in, there's the light off and there's the light on behind, and there's the light coming from above. There's all sorts of things, all sorts of effects. But if you wanted to just put the engraving and then the paint on the back, that would be quite effective, I think, with the light behind it. Okay, so now this is the next day. The paint is very, very dry, and so I can get on with engraving. I have got here a fairly large diamond again, and I am just engraving an outline. I had actually just done an outline and realized that I hadn't had the camera running, and so I am quickly going over it again just so that you can see it's quite simple. Lots of water, and in fact far too much water. It doesn't have to be dripping that fast at all. Anyway, so I'm going over the outlines for you to see. Very simple outline. At this point I had absolutely no idea whether this would show up the word more or just make it even more of a mess. I don't know. Oh, I'm having just such a lot of fun experimenting here, and yeah. Anyway, doing the outline, and I'm actually skipping over where the flowers and the leaves are engraved on the top, but I can't really see what I'm doing anyway because it's just all a mishmash and it's all wet and I can't see what's going on. But once it is dry, of course, then you can touch up because you can see a lot better. Perhaps it might have been better not having the engraving on the top, just having the letters, the colourful letters, and then perhaps the delicate upper engraving going around the letters, maybe across in a couple of little places, but otherwise with the word love being a bit more prominent and not quite so messed with. I don't know. It depends. It depends. It looks a little bit lacy, if you like. Certainly from a distance you can't really make it out clearly what's going on, but it's intriguing. It's 3D. It's colourful. It's lacy. I think people may look at it and wonder how on earth it's been done, you know. They'll also wonder why on earth it's not just a tenner. But that's nothing unusual. So I've got a waxy pencil here, and I somehow just looked at this and I thought, oh no, it needs something. And I had in my mind just a slightly larger version of the flowers, and so I thought I'd scribble one on, and then I didn't like that, as you will see. Nothing like using the dirty water from the paintbrush. Okay, and so I just preferred something to flow a little bit better with the frames. So same idea. Reminds me of a clown, this. Just one random flower coming out the top of the word. And also this, because this video is for tier 2 on Patreon at the moment, right now in April 2022, Patreon tier 2 will not have seen the first 2 videos. So this just helps with a little bit of upper surface engraving. I know we've seen the outline, but there's a little bit more for you to watch. So yes, I wiped off the leaves. It doesn't really matter. Of course, I'm just going to throw in some random leaves. Those leaves scribbled on were just so that I could get a visual. That's all. I mean, it's just really simple. So this is a slightly bigger version of the little leaves that I've done. It's ever so simple. Just the most basic effect to make a quick leaf. I'm not really even going to neaten them. I haven't neatened the others. This is like a fun sketch. It is most certainly nothing serious. And sometimes that's very refreshing, I think. We do far too many serious things in our lives. I'm actually engraving fairly deeply here. You can see, of course, there's the old reflection going on, which is my pet hate with surfing. Surfing? What? Engraving on the upper surface of a mirror. Where on earth did surfing come from? Right, so pulling down from the edge of the petals inwards like I normally do. Very, very simple. But in actual fact, I'm building up and I will be going relatively deeply from the outside of the petals coming in. And flicking up so that the middle of the flower is not deeply engraved. Yeah, as I mentioned before, at the beginning of the first video, in fact, we've always got the problem of reflections when engraving on the top of a mirror. It can be a distraction. It can completely wreck a perfectly lovely little face or something like that, face of an animal or something. The eyes will permanently look blurred and white, because as you move from side to side, no matter how you polish out the eyes, as you move, the rest of the body will reflect and your eyes will disappear. So simple things like flowers, basic chunky lettering, fine. And I will be polishing out the middle of this, and it will work to a degree. And but also, the reflection does help show up the engraving, because you haven't just got one white surface, you have got two, because one is the reflection. So your engraving can look a little bit whiter than normal. Now, bearing in mind, if you are engraving on the top of a mirror a lot of detail, you have to remember, especially if you're not hanging it yourself, if you're doing it for someone else, you have to remember to tell them not to say, for example, put it in a passageway opposite a white wall, because your engraving is not going to show up at all. It needs a dark reflection, or it needs the reflection of the depth of a room, and that can be all right. That will be dark enough for it to be effective. So here I've got a white of Kansas, of course, or a Dura white, as I'm calling it these days. And I have scribbled in the middle of the flower. The middle of the flower I went relatively deep with that diamond, so sort of smoothing it out slightly with the Dura white. And here I have got a tiny little rubber, which is a little bit too long, and I'm not pressing hard, otherwise that'll go flying. I'm most certainly not running the drill very fast. And that is just polishing out the middle. You can see it's a sort of a duller, slightly darker shade. And now I've got a hard rubber disc that is just going to float over the top. And I'm just pulling it away so that it can pick up some of the ridges of the petals, only subtly. The middle of the flower at the moment actually is full of glass dust. That's why it still looks quite white, but it's actually polished out. This is a soft grey rubber, very old. Needs to be put in the bin, quite frankly. It's just about hanging in there. So that is looking ever so cute. I wasn't sure what to do at this point. But a few little touch-ups and little blobs. I decided, first of all, we're going to do a signature. I wasn't really sure whether I was going to sign this on the front, but there really was nowhere else to sign it. So there we go. Very, very tiny rat's tail and a very skinny little signature at the bottom. We're going to put the 22 there. That'll do. Two little ducks. But I'm not finished yet. Nope, not that burr. I should edit these things out, but honestly, you sort of get a grip that I don't always know exactly what I want to use. So back to that same sort of size, and I decided to try and just highlight the edges of the middle, even though I had polished them. I just wasn't sure about these flowers that I'd engraved on the top. It might be an idea to have a scrap mirror by your side to experiment on. Normally, as you know, I experiment on bits of scrap glass, test out the burrs and test out effects, but I didn't in this case. I just flew in there blind. But I'm sure that one can pick up a cheap tile from a hardware store to experiment on. So I was going to do the same effect to the big flower, and then I decided not to. There's a little bit of darkness showing up there, and I decided to throw in a little bit of texture, contrast, a little bit of a different delicate effect, and that is simply by adding some little white dots, going relatively deeply. I've got to be honest, this little burr is not that new, and you know, I'm engraving away and thinking, now don't press too hard. Yeah, it's on its last legs, let's put it that way. But I managed to go a little bit deep, and then I decided to just touch up a little here and there, dry. So that's quite cute. It's quite delicate, quite lacy, and just a slightly different effect to what is on the other flowers, which are obviously a little bit more simplified. So there you have it. I hope you enjoyed that, and do have loads of fun engraving and painting mirrors. Thanks for watching, guys. Until next time, bye for now.